It's been 4 years since it happened, but it plays in my mind like it just occurred last night. Sometimes, when that woman's horrific face visits me in my dreams, I jolt awake screaming. Even now, as I type this, a chill creeps across my skin and sweat trickles down my back. It was a gloomy June evening, the kind where the sky never fully brightens, and the rain falls endlessly, like the world itself is holding its breath. One of those days that makes your bones feel heavy. I was standing on the veranda, hurrying to pull the laundry in before the storm worsened. That's when I noticed something, just in the corner of my eye. I turned my head, and there she was. A woman, standing silently at the end of my driveway, right outside my home. At first glance, I thought her head was missing. A sharp gasp slipped out, just a startled, breathy noise. But when I looked more closely, the reality was far worse. Her head wasn't gone. It was bent completely backward. So unnaturally far back that it looked as if her neck had snapped.
Her Mund hung weit open.
She didn't move, didn't speak.
Just stod Tere, staring straight up at the sky.
The only sound was the rainfall. I stood frozen in place, watching her for what felt like a full minute. She never looked at me, didn't flinch, didn't blink. Not even a breath. That's when a wave of icy dread washed over me. Something instinctive told me, don't engage her. So I focused on finishing the laundry, trying not to make a sound, moving slowly and carefully. I was heading toward the front door when she suddenly twisted her head toward me. My heart nearly stopped. Her face lit up in a grotesque, overjoyed expression. But it wasn't natural, it was rigid, like a painted-on grin. People smile, and then their faces return to normal. But hers didn't change. She stayed frozen, grinning ear to ear, eyes wide and empty. It was the kind of smile that drills itself into your memory. Too joyful, too stiff, too wrong.
Everything inside me screamed.
That she wasn't okay. That she was dangerous. Still, I didn't speak. Didn't cry out. I just turned and ran. I sprinted to the door, flung it open, dove inside, and slammed it shut.
Locket it boom, a violent toetschook the door. I screamed, dropping everything in my hands. Clotes flee everywhere.
I collapsed to the floor in panic.
What do you want?
I shouted, my voice thin and terrified. But no reply.
Just silence.
I kept thinking, how did she get to the door so fast? I'd only just closed it. Yet she'd managed to crash into it with enough force to shake the frame. It didn't sound like a knock. It sounded like she threw her whole body at it.
I'm calling the police.
I yelled.
Still nothing.
I crawled over to the window and cautiously peeked through the curtain. She was back at the driveway, right where she'd been before. Her head still tilted back, her mouth open, grinning at the sky. Every now and then, she'd twist slightly, like she was quietly celebrating something I couldn't see. I did call the police. They arrived soon after, and they took her into custody. I remember one of the officers asking if I was okay, but I couldn't stop looking at her. Her face was bleeding. Blood streamed from her forehead and nose. That's when I realized, she had rammed her face against my front door. Even through the blood, she was still smiling. Still frozen in that awful, joyful expression.
I never heard anything else.
The police didn't follow up. They simply took her away. Maybe she was on something. Maybe she was unwell. I don't know. I just can't understand why she ran at me like that. And I keep thinking, if I hadn't shut that door in time, she would have crashed right into me. I remember it every time it rains. My name is Erica. I was 23 when that happened, and now I'm 61. But it still feels fresh. Like it happened just last night. That same year, my friends and I had decided to get away from the city for a weekend of camping. Just some peace, nature, and no distractions. The forest was dense, the silence eerie. The only sounds were our conversations and the occasional call of an owl. As night crept in, the fire crackled, casting shadows that seemed to dance and coil with lives of their own. We took turns sharing ghost stories, each one darker and creepier than the last, until an uncomfortable quiet settled over us. Just as I was about to lighten the mood with a joke, we heard it. A faint rustling at the edge of the clearing. Did you hear that? Sarah whispered, her voice shaking. We froze. Listening. The sound grew louder. Closer. It wasn't the kind of sound animals make. Nor the rustle of wind. It was steady, slow, deliberate. Probably just a raccoon, Jake said, attempting to sound calm. But his face gave him away. Before anyone could react, something stepped out from the darkness. It was tall, unnaturally thin, with arms and legs that stretched too long to be human. But it wasn't the size that froze us, it was the absence of a face. Where its features should have been was a flat, smooth surface, pale and slick like wax pulled tight. We stared, speechless. Our minds couldn't register what we were looking at. Then it jerked forward suddenly. Panic erupted. We leapt to our feet, the campfire casting wild shadows on our terrified faces. Run! I shouted, grabbing Sarah's arm and pulling her into the trees. We tore through the woods, branches scratching our skin, thorns tugging at our clothes. Behind us, that faceless horror chased us, limbs flicking forward like insect legs. We stumbled into an open patch of woods, lungs heaving. Jake and Tom were nowhere in sight. We need to find them, Sarah cried, her voice trembling.
Ten came a scream, piercing, desperate.
Jake. We ran toward it, but halfway there it stopped, cut off with a sickening, wet sound that made my stomach twist. We found him lying near the base of an old oak tree. Blood pooled around him, his limbs bent awkwardly, eyes frozen wide in terror. And towering over him was the faceless thing, its head cocked to one side like it was admiring what it had done.
Tom? Wer ist Tom? Sarah sobbed.
I spun around, and there he was, sprawled across the dirt, twisted and broken, mouth frozen in a grimace of agony. The faceless being turned its attention to us. We ran again, crashing through the brush, heart pounding, the sound of it stalking us never far behind. My lungs burned, every step felt heavier, but we didn't stop. Finally we saw it, an old cabin, half buried in vines and rot. There! I shouted. We sprinted to the door and shoved it open, slamming it shut behind us. A heavy wooden beam nearby, just big enough to bar the door. Thud! 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 The thing slammed itself against the door. The entire frame groaned and shook.
Ten. Sie längse. Is it gone?
Sarah whispered, barely audible. I don't know, I replied, heart pounding in my throat.
Sie längse stretched.
Each second felt like an hour. Then the door exploded inward.
Wut splintert. The Kreature stot in the doorway.
Still. Watching. Head tilted in that same unnatural angle. Feeding off our terror. It stepped forward, slowly with purpose, arms reaching. We backed away until we were pressed against the wall. Sarah shrieked as it leaned close, fingers like bone inches from her face. In a last burst of panic, I grabbed a broken plank and swung. It barely reacted. Its smooth face turned toward me. It reached out, and the moment its skin brushed mine, everything went black. When I came to, it was daylight. I was lying on the forest floor. The cabin? Gone. Sarah? Gone. Jake and Tom? Gone. The only evidence anything had happened was the dried blood on my shirt and the crushing dread in my chest. I don't know what that thing was. Maybe it wasn't from here. Maybe we weren't supposed to see it. I've never told this to anyone. Who would believe me? Now, I see a therapist, trying to forget that night. But sometimes I still wake up breathless, drenched in sweat, hearing echoes of that scream.